in this call. So if you don't want your image to be used, feel free to switch it off at any time. And yes, well, warm welcome to the third of our AI for Good masterclass sessions. I'm going to share my screen so you can see what's going on. We are now currently halfway through our masterclass journey run by Changemaker Exchange. For those of you new to us, our work is all around empowering young changemakers with all the tools that they need to fulfill their missions in the world. And this masterclass journey is all around navigating the whole world of AI. We're right now in the middle of this journey. We've kicked off with the promise and the opportunity for the impact space, then moved into very practical how-tos with a conscious tinkering session. We're now on to the other side of the coin, if you like, looking into some of the perils and the risks. And the question very much remains and was definitely present for many of us on the first two calls. How do we do all this safely and ethically? And of course, we need guardrails. And this session today is all about building responsible, safe, ethical AI. And to help us understand this, we're bringing in an expert on AI ethics and responsible implementation. Super happy to have you with us. It's Dr. Khawla Mallat from SAP, who I'm going to very shortly give the floor to. And just a reminder that this is also this whole idea of mindful and ethical implementation is why we've created our own our own hub on AI for good, including a policy and manifesto on how to, mindfully implement AI. Also, not know when not to implement AI, and you can find links to that alongside lots of resources in the chat. The flow for today is again going to be a super quick pulse check. We're going to switch it up a bit, do a little quiz with you to see how you would navigate some ethical dilemmas in AI. Then going to have the insights from Dr. Hawla, and then go to a question and answer, a moderated one, while you all have the chance to ask Hawla any questions you have about all of this. Again, massive thanks to the partners for this program, SAP and EY, supporting this effort, and I think providing real leadership and collaboration in this whole AI for good space. So, gonna pause here, and I'm gonna invite you. You should see on the side of your screen in the chat an app popping up. You press open on this called Slido, and it's going to come with a number of different questions for you. And I'd love to know how you would navigate each of these situations. They're all going to be ethical questions about the use of AI. And the first one, bit of a quiz question. I want you to have a look at this. You use an AI tool like ChatGPT to generate a logo for your new project. Who legally owns the copyright to this? Is this you? Is this the AI company? Is this the original artist of the logo, or is it nobody? If you don't see the pop-up, then Miriam has also dropped in the chat the link to where you can join the Slido. So is also a link to the external platform, which you can now see in the chat. So click the link in the chat if the pop-up is not working for you. Okay, and hit your answers. Okay, and I'm going to share my screen so you can see what people are saying. Okay, and you can already see there's some differences in opinion here, and there are definitely some ethical dilemmas around ownership and copyright here. But the 58% of you who said nobody, technically public domain are actually right, although there are nuances according to where this is. And this is, of course, a very thorny subject. Okay, next question. A community member or a member of like a beneficiary, someone you work with, writes a distressed email. It's right at the end of your working day, you're exhausted, and you ask an LLM to write a reply. It writes something beautiful, maybe even better than you could have written. Is it okay to hit send on this? Yes, no, or only if you edit it heavily. What are we seeing here? Okay. Interesting. We have around 3/4 of you who would use it, but edit it heavily to have your own voice. Only 5% wouldn't want to use it at all, maybe. And around a quarter who would just hit send like that. Okay, also interesting. Thank you for sharing. Next one, maybe you're a non-profit who has a helpline where people can call in distressed or needing different guidance. You have to choose a new system for this. Would you choose system A, only human volunteers, slow and expensive, and you can help 50 people through this, but the advice is 100% safe and 100% human? Or system B, cheap and fast, you can help 10 times more, but you might give bad biased advice to 5% of them. What are we saying ethically here? I can see some people wrestling with this question from the faces. Okay, we definitely have a clear majority, 85% here, who would go for the smaller scale but safer, slower option with 81%. 19% would go for the AI chatbot here. And next question. So a free AI tool can organize your donor database perfectly in seconds. But on the terms, the small print, which you might never read, says they will use this data to train their models. This doesn't have to be donors, by the way. It could be, of course, depending on your role, could be your grantees or your community members. Would you be happy putting their data into an open large language model? Okay. Good. We can tell maybe we have a lot of Europe-based people in the room. GDPR standing up for that. Seems to be again a big majority here. No way. Some people, if they can anonymize the names, others actually no one who would put the data straight into an LLM, which is encouraging to see, I think. All right, and these are exactly the kind of dilemmas that we'll be digging in to today, and that yeah, we're going to hand over now to Dr. Khawla to give us a bit of an insight into, I think, both on a meta level and how to very practically navigate this very difficult space. And yeah, floor is yours, Khawla.
Thanks, Nick. Just give me a second to share. No, very, very interesting responses. And I think from the look of it, it seems like many of you here are already very aware of the risks and challenges when it comes to the usage of AI, which is really reassuring. But I still hope that I can share with you something useful today, something practical that you can take back into your own projects. AI gives us superpowers, whether we're building like a small startup, or creating tools, or work, or using it to work on social impacts, or maybe even just exploring ideas. And now we have capabilities that were not imaginable a few years ago. And that's really exciting, because it also means that the decisions we make as builders carry more weight than ever. So this is why I wanted to talk to you about how we can make sure that the power of AI is used responsibly. We hear a lot this word responsible usage, responsible AI. It feels like it's a buzzword, or maybe even something to just check the compliance box. But I can reassure you, it actually helps us design better products, avoid unintended harm, and build AI that people can trust. Because let's be honest, some days it feels exactly like this. AI is everywhere in every product update now, every pitch deck, every tool we use or open, even now fridges and washing machines have AI capability. And it's moving really, really fast, faster than anyone expected. And that's great, because it means that we can build an experiment with far less time and far fewer resources than before. And the amazing part is that now the barrier or the constraints to create something meaningful with a positive impact has never been lower. But with that speed also comes a challenge that sometimes AI behaves in ways we didn't anticipate, or has an impact we didn't fully consider. And sometimes, or what I really see again and again in my daily work is that most of the harm we see with AI doesn't come from bad intentions, but it comes from systems behaving differently than the builders expected. So before we talk about governance or responsible practices, I wanted to start with a few real examples, cases where people genuinely try to do something useful, but then the outcome wasn't as expected. So let's start with our first example. This one comes from the Netherlands. It's a case that began with a very responsible goal. It was the Dutch tax authority that wanted to detect fraud in childcare benefits, so that the benefits can go to those who are really in need. They built an automated scoring systems to help flag potentially risky applications. Nothing unusual. It's a typical scenario where we would think that this could benefit from some AI automation. But the system learned patterns that weren't actually related to the task, to fraud detection. Things like dual nationality, small genuine administrative errors, or missing documents, and thousands of completely innocent families were suddenly marked as high risk. So some people lost their benefit overnight, some fell into debt, others lost their home, and some even lost the custody of their own children. No one really built this system to cause harm. It was just meant to protect public funds, but because its behavior wasn't fully understood, it spiraled into one of the biggest public scandals in Dutch history. There were protests on this scandal and so on. So just to tell you that this is one of the clearest examples of how unintended harm can emerge even when the intention is good, and this is due to problems of lack of explainability. We have here bias that was in the outcomes of this AI system. But let's also see a different example. So maybe many of you have already seen online. There are some tools like Character.AI and other platforms that became popular because they made AI feel more human, more natural, expressive, etc. And people could build characters to role play or experiment, or maybe even just chat freely in a way that felt warm and engaging. The goal here wasn't to replace therapists or provide medical advice. The motivation was much simpler, to just make conversations with AI feel fluid, fun, and a bit more personal. But what happened in the real world was more complicated. Some users started turning to these AI characters during moments of vulnerability, late at night, during anxiety, and when dealing with personal crisis. And because these models weren't designed nor validated as mental health tools, they sometimes gave unsafe and even dangerous guidance. Not out of bad intentions, but simply because general purpose large language models do not understand risk, do not fully understand context, nor the emotional weight of someone's message. So one thing that made this even more visible is that some of these platforms are now facing lawsuits. Because many families claimed unsafe responses contributed to severe harm, including, unfortunately, cases of suicide. And whatever the court decides, the signal is clear here that people will rely on AI systems in ways they were never meant to be used. And that's why it's so important to edge test AI systems before releasing them, to make sure they don't implicitly support tasks they were never meant for, especially the sensitive ones like the one we have at hand here. This is another case where the harm didn't come from intention. It came from unexpected behavior and from users dependent on the system far beyond the original motivation. And now also taking a look to different examples. Usually when people think of AI risks, they usually think of misinformation, bias, safety issues, also the copyright problem brought up by Nick, which is still a big question mark. But there is also an environmental footprint too. So from CO2 emissions to energy consumption, water usage, etc. And that footprint is growing as models get larger and that the deployment gets wider. For instance, I think training a single large language model can require massive amounts of electricity and equally massive amounts of water to cool the data centers running those systems. And then in places already struggling with water scarcity and with drought, this added demand really mattered for them. So some communities even saw tensions and protests, for instance, in Chile, in Spain, and in Arizona, when water originally meant for residents and agriculture was redirected to data centers. So this shows how AI can create environmental impacts that weren't fully understood at a time, and of which the scale wasn't fully estimated. I'm just giving you here a snapshot because I think in the next session you'll hear from Sasha Lucioni, and I believe there is no one better to explore the sustainability side of AI within her. And I have to be honest, choosing only 3 stories was the hardest part of preparing this talk, because unfortunately there is no shortage of cases where AI ended up causing real harm, from discrimination to privacy breaches, accountability failures, and more. So unfortunately, it's the case. That's up. Right, so when looking at these three examples, they might seem somewhat unrelated. Were in different countries, different domains, different technologies, but what they have in common is really important. None of them were built with harmful intentions. They were built to help, but the outcomes took a very different path. And that's the thing about AI. If we don't guide it, even well-intended systems can slip into the shadow side. Bias, exclusion, unsafe behavior, environmental impact, you name it. But with the right practices, the right oversight, and the right design mindset, AI can take us in a completely different direction. A direction where it supports people, where it enhances fairness, it can protect the vulnerable and aligns with the values that we want. And every team, whether you're a startup of 2-3 people or a global company, is standing at this fork. And the question here isn't what can AI do? It's actually which direction are we steering it toward? And that's the moment we're in. We're not choosing whether to use AI. I believe now everyone using AI one way or another. We just have to choose how to use it. And the way we choose that direction is with governance, not the boring bureaucratic version, just a simple structure or scaffolding that keeps what we build safe, stable, and trustworthy. Because good AI needs good governance. So the natural question would be, what does that actually look like in practice? And the good news is that it doesn't have to be complicated. Here, what I'm showing is the core building blocks of a strong AI ethics governance system. Simple, practical, and scalable. What we need is clear principles, a lightweight policy, risk assessment and mitigation, defined responsibilities, and basic documentation and transparency, traceability, sorry. And that's really it. If you have these foundations, even in a very simple form, you're already ahead of most organizations, unfortunately. So let's maybe start with the first building block, the guiding principles. These are basically your compass. They shape every AI decision you make, design choices, data choices, product choices, you name it. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. You can, fortunately, draw inspiration from global frameworks. We have those of the World Health Organization, from UNICEF, OECD, UNESCO, and many others. And you can adopt them as they are or adapt them to your own reality or business. So the key is your principles should reflect what you care about, the values you want AI to express, and what red lines you will not cross. Once you have that compass, everything else becomes easier because it really anchors your decisions when it comes to AI. So I'm just sharing a bit on what we have at SAP. This is what our compass looks like. We had our own principles in the past, but then last year we adapted our guiding principles and adopted those of UNESCO. So you'll see themes you've probably heard of: do not harm, explainability, human oversight, sustainability, etc. And it's a broad set, but the idea is simple, that every AI use case we build should align with these values. Your own set of principles doesn't have to list every concept you see here, but maybe it should just cover the essentials. You can keep the list short, but make sure it spans the core dimensions of protecting people, protecting their data, ensuring fairness, being transparent, and considering the environmental impact, of course. Once you have your guiding principles, then the next step is to turn them into something actionable. And that's where your AI ethics policy comes in. This doesn't have to be a long document. Even 1 or 2 pages can go a long way. So a good policy simply does 4 things. It defines the scope, how this policy applies and to what. It clarifies who's responsible for what. It sets a few mandatory safeguards, and it defines approval paths for higher risk use cases. So it's basically the agreement inside your team on how you're going to build AI responsibly. And again, this can be incredibly lightweight. If you're curious what the full policy looks like in practice, you can scan this QR code here and you can check the policy of the AI ethics policy of SAP. But again, this doesn't have to be your starting point because we have a comprehensive document. SAP operates globally and builds AI at a big scale. So as a smaller team, the policy could be much shorter. Even a single page that defines the scope, responsibilities, and a few non-negotiables, is really enough. And then once you have your principles and policy, the next step is making sure every AI feature you build or use is actually aligned with them. That's where risk assessment comes in. And this doesn't have to be heavy. It's really about asking what could go wrong, from whom, and how do we reduce that. So it's actually having a critical thinking towards the impact of your AI system. When you assess an AI system, you usually end up with one of these 3 decisions here. So either you accept because the risk is low, well understood and manageable, so you just move forward. The risk is higher, so you add safeguards, things like human oversight, better transparency, etc. You reassess, and then when it reaches a level where the risk is manageable, then you just move forward. And sometimes if some things are fundamentally misaligned with your values or too risky to control, then you can choose to not build it or not use it. And that's also a responsible decision. And whatever path you take, you don't just do this once because AI changes now as people use it, especially with the agentic frameworks. So continuous monitoring becomes really needed. So here the goal is really to catch problems early on before they show up in the real world. I can just go quickly here just to show you our AI ethics assessment process, not something you need to check in detail, but just as an example of what process looks like at a scale. We have the same structure. We have the use cases that we stop, those that cross certain red lines that we've defined. We have use cases that we approve when we find that the risk is manageable. But internally, we also define a set of high-risk factors that tell us which use cases need deeper scrutiny. So you can choose to define your own versions of this. So you can define your red lines to not cross. You can define also some factors that with those you can consider it as high risk. For us, for instance, those factors are processing personal data, have an impact on people, including automated decision making, being deployed in high risk sector, or simply being early stage and unpredictable, like some agentic use cases. So you don't need these exact factors. You don't need actually these factors, but maybe a good be useful to simplify your processes, and you can have your own set to maybe help you prioritize what could be of a higher risk. And now, once you have your risk assessment process set up, the next question is who's responsible for what? So clear roles make governance work well, and they also prevent things from slipping through the cracks. You don't need a big organizational chart. Even a small team can set this up with 4 simple roles. You have a builder, so the person or team designing the AI feature or using the AI feature or product. You have a reviewer, someone who challenges assumptions, checks risks, and asks the difficult questions, let's say. And then we have a decision maker who ultimately signs off, and a monitor that will keep an eye on the system to see how it behaves as time evolves. And these roles can all be fulfilled by the same 2 or people, for instance. And what matters is not how many people you have and that you have to have 1 person per role. Is really just having the responsibilities clear. This is our governance structure at SAP. You do not need a structure like this. We have different committees. At the top of it, we have the executive board that sponsors our AI ethics frameworks. But the only point that I wanted to highlight is that responsible AI requires critical thinking and the ability to imagine the worst case scenario before it happens. So in a small team, 1 person can absolutely wear multiple hats: builder, reviewer, decision making, and monitor. And what matters is that someone is actively asking what could go wrong, what could be, who could be impacted, and how we could prevent that. So this is really the mindset that could be a foundation of responsible governance. And finally, documentation and traceability. So think of it less as documentation and more like leaving good breadcrumbs, so future you can understand what was built and why. This is simply about keeping track of 3 things: of what you built, so the decisions you made, the versions you released, and the data or the models that you used. And if something goes wrong later, you want to know how you got there. You should also track how it behaves. Real users will always surprise you, so monitoring lets you catch drifts, bias, or failure modes early on, instead of after already causing the harm. You also have to track what you improve. So if you fix something or change something, write it down. It's how you learn over time and how you stay accountable. Again, this doesn't really need a giant compliance setup. Just a simple habit of keeping notes, keeping versions, and keeping an eye on the system already gets you 90% of the value here. So all of this, I think, can sound like a lot, but when you're a small team or just getting started, but the truth is that you don't need a giant framework. You don't need a committee. You don't need a 20-page policy to do responsible AI. It's simpler than we can imagine. Responsible AI scales down really easy, and you can start with just a few simple habits. So here are, I'm going to be listing 8 things that make the biggest difference when you're at the beginning. The first, to start small, but start now. I think even tiny governance is better than none. To write down your principles. It doesn't have to be perfect. Even 5 lines will guide your decisions more than you can think. And you can start with a set of principles and can be extended later on. It doesn't matter. Also, to keep your policy short, 1 page, clear on what is in scope and what is not, with a human understandable language. To assess risks early, not because someone requires it, but because fixing issues later is always more expensive and more complicated. Also, making ownership explicit is what we talked about, roles and responsibilities. So the clarity on who decides what removes the confusion and prevents things from slipping through. To watch your AI after launch. So as we said, AI evolves and monitoring it isn't optional anymore because it's part of responsible development. Document what you build. Future you will be grateful. Even simple notes help with debugging, updates, and accountability. And most importantly, to ask for help. There are experts, open guidelines, and AI ethics communities everywhere now, and you don't have to figure this out on your own. Just to close off, AI gives us incredible possibilities, and every one of us plays a part in making sure that those possibilities turn into something positive. So start small, stay intentional, and keep asking the right questions to keep improving. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Khawla. Super, super practical. And I think also encouraging how you shared about how responsible AI can be scaled down easily, and we can all start small with it. Thank you again. Brilliant input. Going to remind everyone and drop the link in the chat again, and also welcome some of the new people. We're with today Dr. Khawla Mallat from SAP, working on AI ethics and responsible implementation, and just giving us a brilliant practical input on how to work with this. If you have questions, we would ask again that you add them to the Slido. We're going to come to them now. You have the link for it in the chat, and I'm going to moderate a little using this. I'm going to kick off with 2 or 3 questions, and then you have the chance to add them and to upvote each other's questions. If you see one in there that you really want to see asked, hit the thumbs up button on it. Okay, so Khawla, I would love to kick off and say that, yeah, for a lot of us in the whole social environmental impact space, things can feel very urgent these days. The issues we're trying to solve are so pressing. There's like the need to act fast often. And I think a lot of people, at least in our community, they hear ethics and they kind of get that sense of, oh, slowing down. Is this gonna stop me being able to work how I want to? What's your advice for people who have that thought in their heads?
I think, I mean, for something to be a really sustainable over time, for something, for a business to last and to make impact, I think it should be based on solid foundation. And with AI ethics implementation, we don't really hinder innovation. We just try to make sure that it's done in the right way. I mean, we've seen there are many examples that, as I said, I couldn't include them all in here, that there were AI systems that were rushed to be released because of this competitive, to keep the competitive edge, because yeah, it was very interesting to release that, but then there was a lot of backfire because they were found to be very risky, risks of bias and discrimination, of inappropriate speech, or of lack of explainability, and those had to be taken down. And I think here the reputational damage is even higher than the impact that these AI systems made. And I think in this context here, we're trying to make positive impact, whether socially or on environment. I mean, we're trying to make something good, a positive impact. So we really have to make sure if we're releasing an AI system or using it for that end, that it will ensure that positive impact, and it will not unintentionally flip that impact to a negative one.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we do actually need to be more intentional, slow down, take a breath. It's kind of a non-negotiable, I'm hearing. I think a lot of people in the non-profit space, and that's also maybe, and I think you bridged that gap very well by the way of a big corporate like SAP and how different that space is. But if you are like a small non-profit leader, founder, very low budget, using free version of ChatGPT, don't have the funds for a pro one or to be signing data protection agreements, etc. Do you have power to be ethical, or is this only, a game that the big players can play?
Yeah. I mean, maybe just one step back, we can probably never ensure that we're ethical at 100%. We strive to be ethical and responsible, and we try our best. But there are still some residual risks for which there aren't any answers. And some of them you mentioned at the beginning with the Slido questions. So coming back to your question, I think there are some best practices that we can all include in our daily usage. And I think the participants here are aware of that, related to the question on data. So whether to share that with LLM provider or an AI provider that might eventually use that for further training their model. So my recommendation here is to really limit as much as possible personal data or data that is sensitive, as much as possible. You can have placeholders instead of this personal data, to ensure also that you have neutral outcomes, and that people are being treated more or less in a fair way or an equal way, since the large language models is not aware of the demographics of the person that we can draw from simply their names, then it's best. And human oversight is very, very important. So we should not take any outcome as granted. We have to really review what AI gives us back, even though it looks really plausible. I mean, AI can hallucinate a lot. There is a lot of implicit bias risk in the outcome. So we have to cross-check the references, the information that is being given back. We have to really make sure that whether writing an email or summarizing a document, that it really reflects what we want it to include. And human oversight is really important, I think.
Okay, great. Thanks for underlining that for us. And then connected to that question, and actually one of the audience ones, as we start to take these around the tool providers. I have a question from Jaime, typically working with third-party AI-based solutions. And how do we ensure that our ethical principles are upheld when we have zero power over or control over how they're developed and deployed?
Yeah, very valid question. And even at SAP, we do use third-party AI systems. They go through the risk assessment We sometimes have the review with the team from the provider themselves or from internal teams that wish to use those third-party systems. Here, your hands are tied. You cannot do much. You cannot enforce safeguards. But what you could do is have internal guidelines on how to use them. So really, like to list the best practices, some non-negotiables, like some lines, like some uh, non-acceptable usage, for instance, things that you should not cross, as I mentioned, not sharing personal data, having to cross-check the source data or references, having to review the outcome of AI really carefully, all of that. I mean, depending on the use case, the context can differ a lot, and then the best practices can differ accordingly. But I think it lies with um, developing internal guidelines that you should follow in using these third-party AI systems.
Yeah. Okay, great. And let's maybe come to that exact point now, which is actually another question. And I'm going to take some of the more nitty-gritty detail ones now, and then maybe move to the higher, more existential questions. But yeah, on that policy, where, and question from Rin, thanks for that one. Where would you recommend putting this AI policy? Where is it showcased? Is this part of your privacy document? Should it be available externally? Do you have thoughts on that?
So this really depends on how you would like to move forward with it. It could be simply an AI ethics policy. You can have a privacy policy separate to that. It can be joint. You can also have it externally. It can help you from a marketing perspective. You can show that you have a policy in place, and you can ensure that if you're providing an AI solution, then it adheres to this policy, and you have some guiding principles behind. That could help, but you don't have to have it external. I think it really depends on how you would like to approach this. At SAP, we have it external. We have another policy on data privacy and protection, but again, SAP is very big, and it makes sense to have, because we have different teams that work on different topics. It makes sense to have different policies, but it doesn't have to be the case.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Super clear. And yeah, just also flagging and dropping again in the chat that we created a small organization AI policy, particularly looking at the mindful and intentional use of generative AI. We have actually, interestingly, two very similar questions here. Are on is there a solution, and maybe an AI solution or tool to check for AI ethics, to check if there is compliance with whatever is being developed with responsible AI protocol? So is this a manual thing, or are there tools out there to support with this?
There might be tools, and I think, but they're not really like open source or free to use it. But there are also maturity metrics where you can check them out and explore them, and you can place where your organization is at. So this maturity matrices defines, different aspects of AI ethics governance with different levels, and then you can identify where you're at, and at the end you'll have your maturity level, and you can have some guidance on what you should apply next to ensure more maturity in your governance.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. And there is one of the recent young social entrepreneurs in our Europe cohort has developed an AI solution to scrub all your documents of any personal data before you want to put them into an AI tool. So there are things like that out there. You can just put in your document, it doesn't go anywhere, certainly not to Silicon Valley, and then is ready to be added to an LLM to organize it or whatever, but without any personal data given. We have a couple of questions around the policy and how it was developed. Like why UNESCO? Why were those principles chosen? Why did you move to those principles? And can we kind of can we hold them up as real best in class principles?
Um, so we had our own guiding principles at the beginning, internally developed, but then because the efforts on AI ethics, I mean, were limited a few years ago, but then with a lot of interest is being given to the topic, a lot of initiatives, either regionally, we have the EU AI Act, for instance, law, and at the European Union, and globally with these global organizations providing recommendations on AI ethics. And given that SAP is a global company, we chose to align with recommendations that are given by a global international organization. Why UNESCO? Because we felt that the set of principles that they provide really align very closely with what applies to our business. They're a very broad set of principles. And also we've done the exercise of comparing to other frameworks of that of the OECD, for instance, and many more frameworks. And by aligning with UNESCO's, we also ensure alignment with the OECD and with the NIST AI risk management framework, for instance, etc. So it was a choice based on our business, on what aligns with what we do best.
Okay, great. Thank you. Very clear. We have two questions on the environmental impact and is it not a contradiction to be advocating for the environment and at the same time pushing for AI, etc.? I want to highlight here that on Thursday, so at pretty much this exact time in 2 days, we'll have a whole conversation just on that and really dive into those contradictions, dive into some of the pushback against the big tech companies, etc. So don't want to go too deep into that now. But do you have thoughts on that, Khawla, on this whole, what data is there out there for the energy consumption for AI training and your thoughts on it?
Um, so the problem with AI, I think there has been a lack of transparency on the environmental impact until very recently. I think the situation is slightly changing now. We're having a bit more of transparency on its environmental impact. There are a lot of initiatives. For instance, there is the Coalition for Sustainable AI that was launched early this year with the AI Action Summit, whose main objectives is really to provide more transparency on the impacts of sustainable AI, of doing some benchmarking exercises, for instance, etc. I mean, going back to the beginning of the question about the contradiction between the push to use AI and then and its impact on the environment, I think it's all a trade-off. If we use AI to make positive impact, I mean, the objective should be that we try to use AI that makes a positive impact higher than its negative impact, be it environmental, for for instance. And there are also some measures that we can take in our usage of AI that can reduce that impact. So for instance, when writing our prompts, to really start with a prompt that is well structured, that is very clear with very defined instructions to the LLM rather than just doing the back and forth until getting what you really want. So really spend the time on writing your prompt at the beginning rather than just refining it on the go. Also, the image generation task is consumes a lot of energy, and for that we have to really be mindful. It could be fun to use these tools to generate different images. Also, you mentioned use cases of generating a logo or some visuals for one's business. Again, just be very mindful about that. Write your prompt carefully, trying with the objective of getting it on the first try to really limit the impact on the environment.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And as I say, we will dive more deeply into that, but thanks, some super important points there on, yeah, it's also very much about how we use it and how intentional we are. Even a deeper question even than that one, and I think two questions actually kind of hinting on that. And yeah, saying, are we taking for granted here and in general that it is fine to use AI and to have this everywhere, like the meme you shared? And are there like, or do we need to take a step back and say, what are the ethical pros and cons to actually using AI at all? And do we not need to hit pause here rather than yeah, take it for granted that we're fine to carry on this train?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very complex question because here we're at the dilemma of having AI that is simplifying really a lot of tasks and now you don't need like experts to run specific tasks or for instance for coding. Even though I still think that you still have to have some basic formation about programming languages and so on to be able to use generative AI for coding. But I think that currently we're in a time, and I believe that this is transitional, or at least I hope so, that the push is to just use AI. Use AI everywhere, whether it fits or not. It's also for branding purposes. All companies want to brand themselves as an AI company. And this might not be the best approach because we can for simple processes or simple tasks, it's probably better to use a simple algorithm, a rule-based one, which could be more accurate and have a better performance than using an AI system that could be less accurate in these cases and more risky in parallel. Also, maybe just throwing well, maybe steering the question more towards generative AI and narrow AI. Also now it feels like maybe it's a trend of laziness of what we used to invest some time in developing certain like deep learning models, training them in a few data and some data points and trying to really refine it until getting a good performance. Now we're becoming more lazy. Just write a prompt to the LLM and it will do it. But the reality is smaller AI models, so narrow AI models, still perform better than generative AI for those expert tasks. Also, maybe coming back to the point on sustainability, they have a lower footprint on environment. And they're still better suited for certain tasks, of course.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's it's also a reminder. So I do want to really acknowledge that question, and not and also not as Changemaker Exchange to fall into that trap of trying to push AI in places where it should not, or should not be used, or isn't welcome. And I think also there's a bit of a danger of lumping AI under one big clumsy term when it means so many things, and many of them which have been in use for quite some time now. If you look at how it powers algorithms, or how natural language processing or image recognition, etc., I think there is a lot of kind of, particularly as you differentiated them there, of people just seeing generative AI as AI when there are so many different uses of it. And I think we need to be having a more nuanced conversation, particularly when we're looking at ethical and environmental impacts.
Yeah, definitely.
One question at the top here, we're seeing a lot of AI principles, manifestos from big companies, which can often feel a little like PR. And yeah, I don't know if there is a term, ethics washing, but
It
how can we spot the difference between ethics washing and people, organizations who are really doing the hard work of safety and harm reduction?
No, very valid point, and we're seeing more and more of ethics washing when it comes to AI. Yeah, basically, some companies now just list a few principles in their website, and they just, if asked a bit more in details, now that we ensure fairness, we ensure accountability, and so on. But then when you try to dig deep, um, you realize that this AI ethics setup is somehow just shallow. Um, I mean, how you can detect that? Maybe just trying to find more resources on or more documents that the company has on AI ethics, and try to see whether they really tackle the issue, or they really uh, give it enough thought, and they take the appropriate safeguards to prevent some risks, or if it's just a marketing language of we uphold these principles and we adhere to them, and that's it. So yeah, maybe it's not always simple, but yeah, maybe some some Google search could help with that.
Yep. All right, great. Thank you. And then last couple of questions now as we slowly start to wrap this up. Wondering, you already mentioned that we're kind of in the transition period here. We're probably at fairly close to the beginning still of this crazy AI wave. Like, I wonder what you think, looking back on, will be something we will look back on and think, oh wow, we shouldn't have done that. Like, we should have done that differently. A bit like looking back on social media from 15 years into the future or whatever, and saying, ah, we didn't see that isolation, polarization, mental health crisis, etc. What do you think we will be looking back on with AI and thinking, wow, we should have done that really differently?
It's hard to know because yeah, it's really hard question to answer to, because we see AI is evolving at very fast pace, and I have no idea where we'll be in 10 years, for instance. Will we reach the super intelligence or the artificial general intelligence? How would it look like, and how it would impact our lives? What we know, for the at least with the current status that we have, AI will have a lot of impact, for instance, on education, on the workforce, etc. And I believe that we have to anticipate those impacts. It's already having this impact, but and some Some governments are working on that, and some companies are also trying to look at the long-term impact of AI on their workforce, etc. Also, us as individuals, we have to anticipate that. We have to maybe upskill to learn how to live with AI, use it responsibly, of course, and not fall into fall a victim of its risks. For instance, the risk of a misinformation. It's very difficult to predict, but maybe just one piece of advice of ask the difficult questions, take the extra step. And for instance, if you have a doubt whether your decision has been made by an AI solution or system or not, normally it should be transparent and you should have that information. If you're not, maybe take an extra step and ask about it, challenge it. Now when candidate screening, AI is being used heavily, and there should be, for instance, feedback channels where you can raise an issue. And if you believe that you've been discriminated against, or if your application wasn't considered fairly, then I recommend you to go and raise that issue and take the extra step. Really.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Khawla. Yep. And then final question, wondering if there's something potentially missing from this whole debate and space of AI ethics, responsible implementation, data privacy, etc. Maybe a deeper question around dignity and human dignity, and I think particularly for us in the social impact space, like human connection really is the core. So even if an AI is perfectly unbiased, perfectly safe, there's often a line, I think, where using AI is not ethical simply because it's not human. But this might fall through the gaps on some of these policies, etc. Where do you stand on that, and how can we ensure that that human dignity is kept in?
I think now with AI is evolving, we are considered more and more human-like, which we shouldn't. This is also something that we could maybe, I don't know, if to maybe try to slow down. I don't know if we'd be able to, but this could be in the format of ensuring human in the loop of in any tasks. When we want to use AI to automate certain processes or to simplify certain tasks. What I believe now, at least AI is not at the level of dealing with social interactions. It still doesn't understand this nuances in social interactions and communication. But it probably won't. It would learn to also bypass that. We just have to be very aware to leverage these social interactions to not fall in the trap of just relying on AI, because you don't have to talk to anyone when you use it. It gives you the information and it just gets things done. Think about the long-term impact and how this could shape our society. I think with what you mentioned already with social media, that already had that negative impact on us as humans. Of the argument was before that it was bringing us closer together, but unfortunately it wasn't the case. It turned out. So the same with AI, and I think we should really care about our family and friends, about our colleagues, and really prioritize this human connection.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Khawla. And I think that is a really poignant and important note to end on. That however we see this, that we should keep human connection at the core. Thank you again for all your razor sharp insights and thoughts, both on a very high level and super practical level as well. We'll be sending you the recording of this to everyone who registered. Also, some useful links to things that were mentioned. I want to give one final plug to the upcoming masterclasses. So on Thursday, and something we started touching on, have a real world leading figure on the environmental impact of AI, Sasha Luciani. And then the following week, we have Zamina, awesome voice around inclusive AI and bias. So I think still two awesome ones to come, and then the others you can all watch via ChangemakerXchange.ai. AI. They have all been uploaded to the platform. Thanks again, everyone. Really appreciate your time and some great questions. And we see you all again, hopefully soon. Thanks again, Khawla. Bye.
Thank you very much, Nick. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.